Captain Kim Hyun gripped the control panel as the human vessel Unity slowly approached the massive Galactic Council station. Through the viewport, he could see dozens of alien warships already docked, each one easily 3 times the size of his own ship. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, a rotating wheel of metal and crystal that housed representatives from across the galaxy. "Captain, we're receiving docking instructions," reported Communications Officer Han Min-ji from her station. Her voice carried just a hint of nervousness that she tried to hide. "Acknowledged. Take us in nice and steady," Kim replied, his hands moving across the navigation controls with practiced ease. He had been flying spacecraft for over 20 years, but this was different. This wasn't just another mission. This was humanity's chance to prove they belonged among the stars. Admiral Park Ji-ho stood at the captain's right shoulder, his weathered face showing no emotion as they passed between 2 enormous alien dreadnoughts. The ships were works of art and terror combined, sleek curves of dark metal bristling with weapon ports and energy collectors that glowed with barely contained power. "Would you look at the size of those guns?" whispered Engineer Lee Soo-jin from the back of the bridge. "Each one of those cannons is bigger than our entire ship." The docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk that resonated through the Unity's hull. Almost immediately, the communications array came alive with chatter from the alien fleets. The universal translator worked overtime to convert the dozens of different languages into something the human crew could understand. "Is that supposed to be a warship?" The voice belonged to a Vorthak commander, his tone dripping with disdain. The Vorthak were known throughout the galaxy for their aggressive nature and massive battle cruisers that could level entire cities from orbit. "Look at that pathetic human craft," the same voice continued, clearly not caring if the humans could hear him. "Do they even have weapons? I can barely see any weapon ports on that tiny hull." Laughter erupted from another channel, this time from the Zilani fleet. The Zilani were an aquatic species whose ships resembled giant sea creatures, all flowing lines and organic curves. But beneath that beauty lay some of the most advanced weaponry in the galaxy. "Perhaps they brought mining tools by mistake," the Zilani fleet admiral chuckled, his translated voice carrying an odd bubbling quality. "Maybe they think they're here for asteroid collection duty." More voices joined in the mockery. The Krathen delegation made crude jokes about human engineering capabilities. The Morphic Collective wondered aloud if humans had confused their cargo hauler for a battleship. Even species that Kim had never heard of seemed eager to pile on the insults. Captain Kim felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression neutral. Beside him, Admiral Park's face remained stone-like, though Kim could see the older man's hands slowly curling into fists. "Captain," Han Min-ji said quietly, "should I mute the communications?" "No," Kim replied firmly. "Let them talk. They'll change their tune soon enough." Through the viewport, Kim could see alien creatures gathering on the station's observation decks. There were dozens of different species, some humanoid, others completely alien in form. Tall, spindly beings with multiple arms gestured dismissively toward the Unity. Massive creatures that looked like walking boulders pointed what might have been fingers at the human ship. Even the smaller, more delicate species seemed to be shaking their heads in disappointment. The station commander's voice cut through the chatter with official authority. "Attention all vessels. The mandatory combat assessment will begin in 30 standard minutes. Each species will demonstrate their military capabilities by engaging designated targets. Performance will be evaluated by the Council Defense Committee." Kim felt a familiar calm settle over him, the same feeling he'd experienced before every dangerous mission he'd ever flown. This was it. This was their moment. "Tactical Officer Cho Yun-ah, begin pre-flight systems check," he ordered. "All systems." "Green, Captain," came the immediate reply. "Our special package is ready for deployment." The alien chatter continued unabated. Kim heard bets being placed on whether the human ship would even be able to fire its weapons properly. Some aliens wondered if humans understood the difference between military demonstrations and civilian target practice. "They're about to learn something important about humanity," Admiral Park finally spoke, his voice quiet but carrying steel underneath. We don't build our ships to look impressive. We build them to get the job done. Outside the viewport, massive, alien warships began positioning themselves for their demonstrations. Energy readings spiked as weapon systems powered up across the fleet. The show was about to begin, and everyone expected the humans to provide the comic relief. Captain Kim smiled for the first time since arriving at the station. They had no idea what was coming. The first demonstration began with a thunderous roar that shook the entire station. A massive Krathan battleship, easily the size of a small city, moved into position near the designated target zone. The ship's hull was covered in spikes and armor plating that made it look like a flying fortress from humanity's darkest nightmares. "Witness the power of the Krathan Empire," boomed their fleet commander over the communications array. The battleship's main cannon began to glow with an angry red light that grew brighter and brighter until it hurt to look at directly. The weapon fired with a blast that lit up space like a miniature star. The plasma bolt struck a kilometer-wide asteroid and simply erased it from existence. Not destroyed, not broken apart, completely vaporized in an instant. The shockwave rippled outward, causing smaller debris to scatter like leaves in a storm. The alien dignitaries watching from the observation decks erupted in cheers and applause. Captain Kim could see various species clapping their hands, tentacles, or whatever appendages they used to show approval. "Impressive," Admiral Park admitted quietly. "That's enough firepower to level a continent." But the show was just getting started. Next came the Zilani fleet, their organic-looking ships moving through space with an almost dance-like grace. 3 of their vessels formed a perfect triangle around a cluster of space debris. Their weapons didn't look like traditional cannons. Instead, they resembled the stingers of massive jellyfish. "Behold the harmony of destruction," sang the Zilani admiral, her voice carrying that strange, bubbling quality through the translator. All 3 ships fired simultaneously. Beams of pure energy, colored like ocean waves, converged on the target. Where they met, reality seemed to bend and twist. The debris didn't just get destroyed, it got pulled apart at the molecular level. Atoms, separating and drifting away like glowing dust. More cheers from the observation decks. Kim noticed several alien species taking notes on data tablets, probably recording weapons specifications for their own military research. The demonstrations continued for nearly an hour. The Vorthak showed off their particle beam arrays that could slice through solid metal like butter. The Morphic Collective deployed swarm weapons, thousands of tiny drones that attacked targets from every angle at once. Even smaller species brought impressive firepower, from gravity weapons that crushed asteroids into dense balls of matter, to exotic energy types that Kim's instruments couldn't even identify. Each demonstration was met with enthusiastic approval. From the watching crowd, alien dignitaries compared notes, discussing the tactical applications of various weapons systems. Military advisors whispered strategies to their commanders. Everyone seemed genuinely impressed by the displays of raw destructive power. "Final demonstration," announced the station commander, and Kim could hear the barely contained laughter in his voice. "The human vessel Unity will now show us their capabilities." The word capabilities was delivered with such obvious sarcasm that several alien species burst into open laughter. Kim heard comments flowing through the communications. "A ray like water through a broken dam." "This should be entertaining," chuckled a morphic voice. "I wonder if they'll accidentally shoot themselves," added a Krathan officer. "Maybe they have fireworks instead of weapons," suggested someone from a species Kim didn't recognize. Captain Kim took a deep breath and activated the ship's maneuvering thrusters. The Unity began moving away from the main group of vessels, heading toward the designated target zone, but instead of stopping at the standard engagement distance, about 50,000 kilometers, Kim kept going. "Where are they?" "Going?" asked a confused alien voice. The Unity continued moving until it reached maximum effective range, nearly 500,000 kilometers from the target. The assigned target wasn't space debris or an asteroid this time. The Council had selected something more challenging for the final demonstration, a dead moon, roughly the size of Earth's own satellite that had been stripped of atmosphere and left barren by some ancient cosmic event. "Captain," Engineer Lee Soo-jin reported from her station, "all systems are green. The quantum resonance chamber is charging. As planned. Good, Kim replied. Take your time. Make sure everything's perfect. They're positioning so far away, mocked the Vorthak commander, who had insulted them earlier. Cowards won't even get close enough for a proper shot. Maybe their weapons are so weak they need to get right up next to the target, suggested the Krathan officer. Or maybe they're afraid their own ship will get damaged by the explosion, added the Zalani admiral with obvious amusement. The laughter from the observation decks grew louder. Kim could see alien creatures pointing at his ship and making gestures. That probably meant the same thing in any language, mockery and dismissal. Communications officer Han Minji looked up from her console. Captain, should I respond to their comments? No need, Kim said calmly. Our weapon will do all the talking we need. Behind him, Tactical Officer Cho Yun-ah was running final systems checks on their special weapon system. Unlike the massive, obvious cannons on the alien ships, the Unity's primary weapon was barely visible from the outside. Just a small port near the ship's nose that looked more like a sensor array than anything dangerous. Charging complete, Lee Soo-jin announced. We're ready to fire on your command. Kim looked out at the dead moon hanging in space before them. In a few moments, everything would change. The aliens would stop laughing. The mockery would end and humanity would take its place among the stars. All stations, prepare for weapons deployment, he ordered. Weapon charged and ready, Captain, reported Lee Soo-jin from her station, her voice steady despite the pressure they were all feeling. The engineer's fingers danced across her control panel, making final adjustments to systems that had taken humanity's best scientists decades to perfect. Captain Kim nodded and opened a ship-wide communication channel. All hands, this is the... Captain, what we're about to do will change everything. Stay focused, stay professional, and remember, we're not just representing ourselves today, we're representing all of humanity. The bridge fell silent, except for the soft hum of electronics and the distant vibration of the ship's engines. Through the viewports, the dead moon hung in space like a gray marble, its cratered surface telling the story of billions of years of cosmic impacts. The alien laughter continued to pour through the communication channels like a waterfall of mockery. Kim could hear dozens of different species, each one seemingly trying to outdo the others with their jokes and insults. Look at their tiny weapon port, laughed a Morphic Collective representative. My personal sidearm has more firepower than that. I've seen cargo haulers with better defensive systems, added a Krathan officer, his voice carrying the rumbling quality typical of his species. Perhaps they plan to ram the target, suggested a Vorthak commander. It might be more effective than whatever they call a weapon. Admiral Park Ji-ho moved to stand beside Kim's chair. Captain, our long-range sensors are detecting massive energy buildups from the alien fleets. They're preparing to record our failure with every instrument they have. Good, Kim replied quietly. That means they'll have perfect documentation of what's about to happen. Communications Officer Han Minji looked up from her station. Captain, I'm receiving priority messages from Earth Command. They're wishing us luck. Kim felt a moment of emotion break through his professional calm. Back on Earth, billions of people were waiting to hear the results of this demonstration. Humanity's future among the stars hung in the balance. Tactical systems ready, reported Cho Yuna. Target locked. Quantum resonance chamber at full power. The Unity's weapons system activated with almost no visible change. Unlike the massive glowing cannons on the alien ships, humanity's primary weapon looked like nothing more than a small sensor array. There were no building energy fields, no dramatic light shows, no impressive sound effects. Fire, Kim ordered. What emerged from the Unity wasn't a beam of energy or a massive missile. Instead, a small metallic cylinder, no bigger than a coffee cup, shot out from the weapon port. It moved fast, incredibly fast, but compared to the spectacular light shows the aliens had provided, it looked almost pathetic. The alien laughter reached new heights. Through the communication channels, Kim could hear species he'd never encountered before joining in the mockery. Is that supposed to be impressive? Jeered the Zalani admiral, her bubbling voice carrying obvious amusement. A simple projectile. Did they forget to install the explosive warhead? My children's toys fire more impressive projectiles than that, added a Krathon officer. Wait, called out a Vorthak commander. Maybe that's just the targeting system, the real weapon. Must be charging up now. But there was no follow-up shot. The small cylinder continued its journey across the vast distance between the Unity and the dead moon, traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, but appearing to move slowly due to the enormous distances involved. Li Sujin monitored her instruments carefully. Projectile tracking nominal, impact in 15 seconds. Look how long it's taking to reach the target, mocked someone from the observation deck. At this rate, the enemy could move out of the way and take a vacation before getting hit. Maybe they're using it as a very expensive messenger service, suggested another voice. The small cylinder struck the moon's surface dead center, exactly where Kim had aimed it. The impact created a tiny flash of light that was barely visible from their distance. Then nothing. For several seconds, absolutely nothing happened. The moon continued to hang in space, looking exactly the same as it had moments before. Its grey surface showed no signs of damage, no crater, no explosion, nothing. The alien mockery intensified beyond anything Kim had heard before. Laughter filled every communication channel. He could see creatures on the observation decks pointing at his ship and making gestures that clearly meant they thought the weapon had failed completely. Did their weapon malfunction? Asked a confused morphic voice. I don't think it even exploded, added a Krathon officer. Maybe humans don't understand how weapons are supposed to work. Should we send them a manual on basic military equipment? Suggested the Vorthak commander, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Perhaps they need to purchase real weapons from one of our manufacturers, laughed the Zelani admiral. Communications officer Han Min-ji looked worried. Captain, should I check our targeting systems? Maybe something went wrong with the... Wait, Kim interrupted, his eyes fixed on the moon. Just wait. Admiral Park frowned. Captain, how long before... 3, 2, 1. Kim counted down quietly. Then the moon vanished, not destroyed, not shattered into pieces, not blown apart by a massive explosion. The entire celestial body simply ceased to exist, as if someone had reached out and erased it from reality with a cosmic pencil eraser. Where a moon-sized object had hung in space just seconds before, there was now nothing but empty blackness, dotted with distant stars. The alien laughter stopped instantly, replaced by complete and total silence. The silence that followed was unlike anything Captain Kim had ever experienced in space. For a moment that stretched like eternity, every communication channel went completely dead. No chatter, no background noise, not even the usual static that filled the void between star systems. It was as if the entire galaxy had suddenly forgotten how to speak. Where the dead moon had hung in space just moments before, there was absolutely nothing. Not fragments floating in orbit, not a cloud of dust and debris, not even the faintest trace of radiation that should have marked where a celestial body had once existed. The stars that had been hidden behind the moon's bulk now shone clearly through what had become empty space. Li Sujin stared at her instrument readings with wide eyes. Captain, our sensors are showing 0 debris, 0 radiation spillover, 0 electromagnetic disturbance. The energy conversion was completely clean. That's impossible, engineer. Park whispered from his station. When you destroy something that massive, there should be evidence. Fragments, heat signatures, something. But the Unity's advanced sensors told a different story. The moon hadn't been destroyed in any conventional sense. Every atom of its mass had been converted to pure energy and then safely contained within the weapon's quantum field. The process had been so precise that not a single particle had escaped to cause collateral damage. Admiral Park Ji-ho moved closer to the main view screen, his weathered face showing amazement for the first time since they'd arrived at the station. In 30 years of military service, I've never seen anything like this. We didn't just destroy a target, we erased it from existence. The first alien voice to break the silence came from the Vorthak commander who had been leading the mockery just minutes before. Impossible, he whispered, and Kim could hear the shock in his translated voice. Our instruments must be malfunctioning. Nothing can simply disappear like that. But other alien vessels were running their own scans, and the results were all the same. Their most advanced sensors, equipment that could detect particles across vast distances and measure energy signatures from dying stars, were all giving identical readings. Where the moon had been, there was now nothing at all. How? The question came from multiple alien voices at once, a chorus of confusion and disbelief that filled the communication channels. Captain Kim took a deep breath and activated the Unity's main communication system. His words would now be broadcast to every ship in the fleet, every alien species represented, and every observer on the station. Our weapon creates controlled singularities that manipulate matter at the quantum level, he explained, his voice calm and professional. The target is converted to pure energy in a contained reaction. No waste, no debris, no collateral damage. The silence returned, but this time it felt different. Kim could almost hear the alien minds trying to process what they'd just witnessed, and what his words meant. Communications Officer Han Min-ji was monitoring dozens of alien frequencies at once. "Captain, they're running every type of scan they have. Deep space radar, quantum field detectors, gravitational wave sensors. They're trying to find some trace of the moon." "They won't find anything," Tactical Officer Cho Yoon-ah said quietly. From her station, then speaking just loud enough for the open communication channel to pick up her words, she added, "We could have targeted any ship in this fleet with identical results." The impact of that simple statement hit the alien fleets like a shockwave. Kim watched through the viewports as massive warships that had been positioned aggressively just minutes before began slowly backing away from the Unity. The same vessels, that had seemed so intimidating when they'd arrived, were now creating distance, their crews suddenly very aware of how vulnerable they actually were. "You're saying," came a shaky voice from the Krathen fleet, "that you could make our ships simply disappear?" "The weapon doesn't discriminate based on target composition," Kim replied matter-of-factly. "Asteroid, moon, or starship. The quantum resonance field works the same way every time." Panic began spreading through the alien communications. Fleet commanders were demanding explanations from their tactical officers. Science officers were frantically recalibrating their instruments, hoping to find some error in their readings. Military advisors were whispering urgent updates to their political leaders. "But the energy requirements," protested a Zelani scientist, "to convert that much matter would require more power than our entire civilization generates in a year." Su-jin smiled at her engineering station. "That's the beauty of controlled quantum singularities. The reaction becomes self-sustaining once it reaches critical mass. We only need to provide the initial trigger." Admiral Park moved to stand beside Kim's chair. "Captain, we're receiving priority transmissions from every alien fleet. They're requesting immediate conferences with their home governments." Through the observation windows, Kim could see alien creatures rushing back and forth across the station's decks. What had started as a casual military demonstration had become something much more significant. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted, and everyone knew it. "The Galactic Council is requesting an emergency session," Han Min-ji reported. "They want to discuss humanity's immediate admission to full membership status." Kim nodded, but kept his eyes on the empty space, where the moon had been. Humanity had just announced itself to the galaxy in a way that no one could ignore or dismiss. They were no longer the newcomers hoping for acceptance. They were the species that others would think very carefully about before challenging. "Send our acknowledgement to the Council," Kim ordered. "Tell them we're ready to discuss humanity's role in galactic affairs." The age of being underestimated was over. The Galactic Council chamber transformed into a scene of controlled chaos within. Moments of the demonstration's end, through the Unity's communication systems, Captain Kim could hear dozens of alien languages being rapidly translated as species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found themselves discussing the same shocking reality. "Emergency session. Call to order," announced the council speaker, an ancient being whose species had been mediating galactic disputes for over 1,000 years. "All military representatives report to stations immediately." Admiral Park Ji-ho monitored the flood of incoming transmissions. "Captain, we're receiving communication requests from every major power in the galaxy. The Krathan Empire wants to establish immediate diplomatic relations. The Zalani coalition is asking about defensive pacts. Even the Morphic Collective is requesting technological exchanges. And the Vorthak? Kim asked, remembering their earlier mockery. They've already transmitted 3 separate apology messages and a formal request for a non-aggression treaty, Communications Officer Han Minji reported with barely contained amusement. Through the viewport, Kim watched as alien warships that had dominated the space around the station just hours before were now repositioning themselves into respectful formations. The massive Krathan dreadnoughts, which had seemed so threatening upon arrival, now maintained careful distances from the modest human vessel. The council chamber's main screen activated, showing representatives from hundreds of species. Some appeared in person, others through holographic projection, and a few existed only as energy patterns that pulsed with thought. But all of them were focused on the same thing: the small human ship that had just rewritten the rules of galactic warfare. The motion before us is unprecedented, the council speaker announced. Full military membership with highest honors, granted by emergency vote. All those in favor. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Lights flashed, voices called out approval in dozens of languages, and energy beings pulsed with agreement. The vote wasn't just unanimous, it was enthusiastic. Captain Kim, the council speaker's voice transmitted directly to the Unity. Humanity has demonstrated capabilities we didn't know were possible. You have our deepest respect. Kim activated his ship's communication system. Thank you, Council Speaker. Humanity looks forward to contributing to galactic peace and security. There's more, the speaker continued. The Council wishes to offer humanity a permanent seat on the Military Defense Committee with full voting rights on all matters of galactic security. Admiral Park raised an eyebrow. Captain, that's a position that species have fought wars to obtain. They're offering it to us after a single demonstration. Because they're smart, Tactical Officer Cho Yuna observed quietly. Better to have us inside the tent looking out than outside looking in. The next few hours passed in a blur of diplomatic communications. Trade agreements were proposed, cultural exchange programs suggested, and military cooperation treaties drafted. Species that had never shown interest in Earth suddenly wanted to establish embassies in human space. But the most significant change was subtle and harder to measure. It was in the tone of voice when aliens spoke to the human crew. The casual dismissal was gone, replaced by careful respect. The mocking laughter had been replaced by thoughtful questions about human technology and philosophy. Prepare for departure, Kim finally ordered after the formal ceremonies concluded. Set course for Earth. As the Unity began moving away from the station, Li Su-jin powered down their special weapon system. Quantum resonance chamber offline, all systems returning to normal operational status. Kim made his final log entry of the mission. Captain's log, final entry. Today we proved that true strength isn't about the loudest voice or biggest display. Sometimes the quiet ones change everything. Humanity has been underestimated for the last time. The ship's engines hummed to life, preparing for the jump to hyperspace. Through the communication array, they could still hear alien voices discussing the implications of what they'd witnessed. Military strategists were already redesigning their defense systems. Diplomatic corps was scrambling to establish better relationships with Earth. Admiral Park Ji-ho joined Kim at the main viewport as stars began to streak past them. Think they'll remember this lesson? They'll never forget it, Kim replied, watching the station shrink behind them. Every species in the galaxy just learned that humans don't need to shout to be heard. As they entered hyperspace, Communications Officer Han Minji received one final transmission from the Galactic Council. Captain, it's a message from the Council Speaker. He says, welcome to the galactic community, humanity. We're honored to have you among us. Kim smiled as Earth's sun appeared on their sensors, still distant but growing brighter. Humanity had taken its place among the stars not through conquest or intimidation, but through the kind of precision that made others grateful to call them allies rather than enemies. The age of being the newcomers was over. Now they were the species that others looked to for leadership, the quiet ones who had proven that sometimes the most dangerous weapon was the one nobody saw coming. Back on the station, alien crews were already sharing stories of the day the humans made a moon disappear. But more importantly, they were sharing a new understanding. In a galaxy full of loud voices and impressive displays, it was often the quiet ones who held the real power. Humanity had spoken, and the galaxy had listened. The end.